Forbidden places you're still not allowed to visit. Picture this. You're scrolling through Google Earth, exploring random corners of our planet, when suddenly you stumble across a location that's completely blurred out or marked with ominous warnings. You try to research it online, but all you find are cryptic government statements and conspiracy theories. Welcome to the world of forbidden places, where even in our hyper-connected age, there are still locations on Earth that remain completely off-limits to regular people like you and me. Now, you might be thinking that in 2024, with satellites mapping every square inch of the planet and social media influencers visiting the most remote corners of the world, surely there can't be places that are genuinely forbidden. Well, you're about to discover just how wrong that assumption is. We're not talking about places that are just difficult to reach or require expensive permits. We're talking about locations where setting foot could literally get you detained, seriously harmed, or worse. And by worse, I mean potentially wiping out entire civilizations. What makes these places so dangerous that governments around the world have deemed them completely off-limits? The reasons are more twisted and fascinating than you might expect. Some of these locations are crawling with deadly creatures that could harm you in minutes. Others contain secrets so classified that even acknowledging their existence took decades. And then there are places where the very act of breathing could damage priceless artifacts that have survived for thousands of years. But here's the really crazy part. Despite all the security measures, armed guards, and legal threats, people still try to visit these places. In fact, some of the most recent attempts to breach these forbidden zones have ended in serious consequences, proving just how real these restrictions are. We're going to explore not just what makes these places so dangerous, but also the lengths people have gone to try and access them, and what happened when they succeeded. First up, we have a place that's been shrouded in mystery for centuries, and even today, only a handful of people on the entire planet are allowed inside the Vatican Apostolic Archives, formerly known as the Vatican Secret Archives. Contain 53 miles of shelving packed with some of the most sensitive documents in human history. We're talking about papal correspondence that could rewrite history books, trial records of famous historical figures, and diplomatic secrets that governments still consider too sensitive to release. Getting access to these archives isn't just difficult, it's nearly impossible. You can't just show up with a library card and start browsing through centuries of papal secrets. The application process is so rigorous that only the most qualified scholars in the world even attempt it, and most of them get rejected. Even if you somehow manage to get approved, you're only allowed to view a limited number of documents each day under constant surveillance. And here's the kicker. Anything created after 1922 is completely off-limits, meaning some of the most interesting modern records are still locked away. But what exactly are they hiding in there? Among the most famous documents is the trial record of Galileo from 1633. Which chronicles his persecution for daring to suggest that the Earth revolves around the sun. There's also the papal bull that excommunicated Martin Luther, essentially kicking off the Protestant Reformation. But those are just the documents they're willing to admit exist. The really intriguing stuff, including everything dated after 1958, remains completely restricted. Moving from religious secrets to natural nightmares, our next forbidden location makes the Vatican Archives look like a welcoming tourist destination. Imagine an island where the ground is literally crawling with thousands of the world's deadliest snakes. And we're not talking about harmless garden varieties. Brazil's Ilha de Queimada Grande, better known as Snake Island, is home to approximately 4,000 golden lancehead vipers, serpents so venomous that their bite doesn't just pose a severe risk, it can cause serious medical emergencies. The Brazilian government has made it completely illegal to visit this island, and for good reason. These aren't your average snakes that you might encounter on a hiking trail. The golden lanceheads evolved in isolation when the island separated from the Brazilian mainland 11,000 years ago, creating a concentrated population of apex predators with nowhere to go but up into the trees and across every square meter of available land. Some experts claim there's literally one snake per square meter in certain areas of the island. Here's what makes this situation even more intense. Despite the obvious dangers and legal prohibitions, people still try to visit Snake Island. Content creators and thrill seekers have attempted to reach the island, with some even succeeding in landing there with research teams. The Brazilian government requires that any research expedition include a doctor, not as a precautionary measure, but because getting bitten is considered almost inevitable. The legends surrounding Snake Island have only added to its mystique. Some claim it's the hidden location of ancient pirate treasure, while others believe it might be home to extraterrestrial activity. But the reality is far more straightforward and infinitely more dangerous than any conspiracy theory could imagine. The golden lancehead's venom is so potent that it can put a human in critical condition within 30 minutes, and there's no anti-venom readily available on the mainland. What started as an evolutionary adaptation to catch birds has become a severe risk for anyone who steps foot on the island. The snakes literally drop from trees onto unsuspecting prey, and making every step across the island a potential encounter with danger. But if you think Snake Island sounds terrifying, wait until you hear about our next forbidden location. This one doesn't just threaten your life, it threatens the existence of an entire civilization that has survived in complete isolation for thousands of years. North Sentinel Island in the Bay of Bengal is home to the Sentinelese, arguably the most isolated people on Earth, and they have made it crystal clear that visitors are not welcome. The Sentinelese have been living on their island for an estimated 60,000 years, completely cut off from the modern world. They've never experienced diseases like the flu or measles, which means that a single sick visitor could literally wipe out their entire population. The Indian government has made it illegal to approach within 5 nautical miles of the island, and the area is actively patrolled by the Indian Navy. Here's where this gets really dark. The tribe's hostility toward outsiders isn't just cultural preference, it's rooted in historical trauma. In the 19th century, a British officer kidnapped several Sentinelese people and exposed them to diseases that severely affected them, creating a legacy of distrust that persists to this day. When outsiders approach the island, the Sentinelese respond with arrows, spears, and strong defensive actions. The most infamous recent incident occurred in 2018 when American missionary John Allen Chow decided he was going to make contact with the tribe. Despite knowing the dangers and the legal restrictions, he bribed local fishermen to take him to the island. The Sentinelese acted defensively, and his body was never recovered. Even more concerning, another incident happened just this year when a Ukrainian tourist attempted to make contact with the tribe and was arrested by Indian authorities before he could complete his mission. What makes these attempts even more reckless is that the people trying to visit aren't just risking their own lives, they're potentially endangering an entire community. One infected visitor could destroy a civilization that has existed since before the pyramids were built. From isolated tribes to prehistoric art, our next forbidden location represents one of the most heartbreaking losses in archaeological history. The Lascaux Caves in France contain some of the most spectacular prehistoric art ever discovered, paintings that are 17,000 years old and offer an incredible window into the minds of our ancient ancestors. But here's the tragic irony. These caves are forbidden precisely because people love them too much. When the caves were discovered in 1940, they were initially opened to the public after World War II. Tourists flocked to see these incredible artworks depicting horses, bison, and other animals painted by Paleolithic humans. But the very act of people visiting the caves began damaging the art they came to admire. The carbon dioxide from visitors' breath, combined with artificial lighting and body heat, created the perfect conditions for algae and fungi to grow on the cave walls. By 1963, the damage was so severe that the French government had no choice but to permanently close the caves to the public. Today, entering the original Lascaux caves is completely illegal, with severe penalties for anyone caught trespassing. Only a handful of scientists are allowed limited access for preservation research, and even they must follow strict protocols to minimize their impact. The Lascaux tragedy perfectly illustrates how sometimes the very act of appreciation can become destruction. These weren't vandals or treasure hunters causing the damage. These were respectful tourists who simply wanted to witness one of humanity's greatest artistic achievements. Yet their collective breath and presence slowly but inevitably harmed the very thing they came to see. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most famous forbidden location in the world, a place so secretive that the government didn't even acknowledge its existence. Until 2013, Area 51 in Nevada has become synonymous with conspiracy theories about alien research and crashed UFOs. But the reality of what happens there might be even more fascinating than the fiction. This military installation spans over 4,000 square miles of Nevada desert, and accessing it without authorization is absolutely impossible. The security measures are so extreme that even employees with clearance arrive on windowless aircraft to prevent them from seeing the surrounding area. Motion sensors, armed guards, and surveillance systems monitor every approach to the facility. So there you have it, some of the most forbidden places on our planet that you'll probably never get to see in person. From secret government facilities testing classified technology, to islands filled with dangerous wildlife, from ancient caves that can't handle human presence, to tribes that forcefully protect their isolation. These locations prove that even in our modern world, there are still boundaries that absolutely cannot be crossed. What's really wild is that despite all the warnings, legal restrictions, armed guards, and serious risks, people still keep trying to visit these places. Whether it's thrill seekers looking for the ultimate adventure, conspiracy theorists convinced they'll uncover government secrets, or explorers curious about the unknown. Human curiosity seems to override common sense every single time. But maybe that's the point. These forbidden places remind us that our planet still has mysteries, that there are limits to human exploration, and that sometimes the most responsible thing we can do is simply stay away. The next time you're scrolling through Google Earth and come across a blurred-out location or a restricted zone, remember that those barriers exist for very good reasons. Trust me when I say that some places are forbidden for your own well-being, and sometimes the greatest adventure is knowing when not to take one.